Oh my god, this is incredible.
Welcome to another Impromptu Monday. Today, we're making a Southern classic, Coca-Cola brisket. When I first came across the recipe, I thought it was genius because if you look at the active ingredients in Coca-Cola, it practically makes a sweet and sour brisket with a bit of caramel browning. After a bit of research, I found that most recipes contains about 3-4 elements. The brisket, the Coca-Cola, seasoning in some form of a chili or hot sauce, and some seasoning from dry onion soup mix for some reason. If you put all those ingredients in the oven, it'll come out extremely tasty. But today, we're going to overcomplicate things by searing the brisket and caramelizing some onions. Now, since we're cooking brisket, we have to talk about flat cut versus point cut, the decal. I almost always prefer the decal because of its marbling, because of its intermuscular muscles. It always comes out more tender. Today, we're using the flat cut because I want to isolate the fat cap to render some of this beautiful fat to caramelize the onions. And the flat surface on the other side would make for much better browning, which is layman's term for Maillard reaction. Protein's reaction to high heat. That's what's gonna make the meat taste meatier. Enough talk, I think. Let's do it. Because we're rendering the fat, we don't want the pan to be too hot. About medium heat. We season the brisket quite generously. You can use a dry rub as well, but we're going to add some hot sauce later for flavor. Definitely not authentic. But then nothing on this channel is authentic, so I'm sorry. Bit of vegetable oil, just to help it get started. We're going to skim off all the fat later on anyway. And then the brisket in. This is what you want to hear, a very gentle sizzle. Season the other side. And while the fat is slowly rendering, we slice some onions. We have 2 ginormous onions from Spain. We want them relatively thin just to speed up the cooking process. That's definitely enough. Alright, check on the brisket. You want to render the side. Now, once you get a decent amount of fat, you can increase the heat. I want to brown it a tiny bit. Now, that's some wonderful color. Now we brown the other side properly. I mean, it's a lot more work, but this step would add a lot of depth of flavors to the beef, precisely because of the browning, the Maillard reaction. It's what really differentiates a piece of steak to a piece of boiled beef. Now, put this aside to rest. And with all these beautiful beef fat, onions in. It looks like a lot of onions, but a lot of this is moisture. What we're trying to do now is with heat, we're evaporating the water content of the onions to concentrate the sweetness. This will reinforce the sweetness of the Coke and produce a wonderful, wonderful caramel taste. And all those burn bits at the bottom, the fond, those are flavors. And the onion's gonna mop them up and take on some of that brown color. Now we salt, A, to season, B, to help the onion release the natural juices. Now this has turned into a gentler sizzle because of the onions releasing their liquids. With onions, they're very interesting. The harshness that you associate with raw onions, the spiciness and the acidity, they evaporate with the water content. But the sweetness does not. So when you evaporate the water content, the sweetness really concentrates. And the reason why they brown is mostly because the sugar content is burning. Now, classically, when one makes French onion soup, you do it at very low heat and you do it slowly over an hour because it's very easy for the sugar content of the onion to burn. But I normally cheat by cooking at high heat but having a bit of water on the side, and I continuously deglaze the burn bits at the bottom to speed up the process. But today, because we're going to use Coca-Cola anyway, we'll further reinforce the caramel characteristics by deglazing it with a bit of Coke. You cook it at high heat, and when you see the burn bits, dash of Coke, you scrape and you pick up all the fond, all the flavors. Same goes on the other side. This way I can afford to burn it a tiny bit. Burn bits, Coke. Scrape. This is definitely a weekend project. I have to taste it. I mean, Coca-Cola onions. Oh my god. Okay, that's our next recipe. Wow. A lot more caramel than you would expect from regular caramelized onions. So it took almost a whole can to get to the French onion soup texture and colors. Now we're ready. Finish this can, of course. And here we have another 250 ml. In total, 500 ml of Coca-Cola. Regular Coca-Cola, that is, because you need the sugar content. Please don't make this with Diet Coke or Coke Zero. I'm gonna make sure we scrape all the burn bits. And for me, to add a bit of gelatin and thickness, I'm gonna add a tiny bit of chicken stock. This is optional, you can use water. About a can worth. And to balance the extra sweetness from the caramelized onions and to add the flavors of all the spices that is normally associated with this dish, we have Louisiana hot sauce to taste, of course. Brisket back in, fat side up. Juices back in. Once it's back to a boil, stove off, lid on. Now, if your pan is not oven proof, just transfer everything to your roasting tray and wrap it with a bit of tin foil. If you want to maintain some texture for the brisket, so you could slice them thin, cook it at 150 degrees Celsius for about 3 hours. If you want to pull it apart completely, cook it at about 120 fan for about 5 hours. I like them fork tender, so we're gonna cook it at 120 for 5, and I'll see you then. All right, after 6 hours, let's check on our brisket. I know I said 5, but I was out. All right, I'm ready, are you? Oh, that is beautiful. That is so beautiful. Now, the first order of business, we skim off the fat, and there's going to be a lot of fat. But this fat cap beautifully caramelized and rendered out the fat, and it protected the meat from the heat and kept it moist. I know I said I want to pull it apart, but since it's Impromptu Monday, I feel like we have to slice it and plate at least one. Now, we'll let the brisket rest just for a tiny bit. It's up to you what consistency you like your sauce. If you like it slightly on the watery side, this is perfect. If you want it to be a bit more syrupy, you can reduce it on the stove. Now, shall we? Against the grain, of course. You can see this beautiful fat cap has really done its job. It's beautifully moist. Oh, that's wonderful. Warm plates, of course. Caramelized onion gravy. And we sauce the plate. And just to reinforce a tiny bit of the acidity from the Coke, we're gonna add just the smallest dash of lemon juice. And that's it. And there you have it. Coca-Cola brisket with caramelized onions. I really hope you enjoy. Oh, make sure you add some hot sauce to this.